Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 716 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, and today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. And quite a bit has happened since we talked last. I had the special Thanksgiving Day episode, which was recorded earlier in the week. And, since we've done a proper new episode here, the Rangers lost a 3-2, frustrating game against the Anaheim Ducks to conclude their 4-game road trip. They also traded Ryan Reaves to the Minnesota Wild for a 5th-round pick in 2025. So we're going to talk about all this. We're going to talk about the Ryan Reaves trade from every conceivable angle, the impact that he had with the Rangers, the return that the Rangers got in exchange for Reaves, the salary cap ramifications, and even going to at least briefly talk about what this could mean as far as the Rangers potentially acquiring Patrick Kane at some point this season. I know a lot of Ranger fans are really fixated on that potential move for the team. So we're going to get to all that good stuff in just a second. And like I said, we will start with Reaves. Going to spend the bulk of today's episode on Ryan Reaves as opposed to the loss of the Ducks. But we'll certainly talk about the game against the Ducks as well. Once again, Ryan Reaves to the Wild in exchange for a 5th-rounder in 2025. Reaves had really kind of, just lost his role with the Rangers. He'd been a healthy scratch in either 7 out of 8 or 8 out of 9 games, something along those lines. Just has not been seeing the ice very often at all. He now heads to the Minnesota Wild, and he actually requested the trade. So I think that kind of softens the blow a little bit in terms of, what the reaction in the locker room might be and players being upset about it, because I have no doubts that Ryan Reaves is a very popular player in that locker room. I think, if you ask any player on the Rangers, who's not going to like Ryan Reaves? Ryan Reaves is that guy that's kind of friends with everybody on the team. And so I'm sure there are guys in that locker room and guys on this team that are at least somewhat sad to see him leave. But, again, if we've said this once, we've said it a million times, this is a business. And, Ryan Reaves, again, he just didn't really have a role with this team anymore. And the writing has been at least somewhat on the wall. And at first, I see that the Rangers trade Ryan Reaves for a 5th-rounder. And it's such a gut punch. And, once you look at it from every angle, I think the trade makes, sense. And you can understand and appreciate why the Rangers did what they did. But at first, it's like, okay, we traded Ryan Reaves for a 5th-round pick 2 years from now. It's almost like, what's the point, right? Like, why not just hang on to him, have him as kind of that 13th forward and mix him into the lineup every so often, especially when it's a game when you're anticipating that there could be some trouble. But when you see the salary cap ramifications from this trade of Ryan Reaves, it does start to make a heck of a lot more sense. And like I said, the salary cap ramifications, that's something we're going to talk about in greater detail just a little bit later in today's episode. But wanted to talk about this certainly from the human side as well. For starters, there was this idea on Twitter because Ryan Reaves, there's people that love him. There's also some fans that are serious naysayers of Ryan Reaves, and they just don't get it. They don't see what he brings to the table. I've always been a Reaves fan, love the physicality, love the kind of big brother role that he's played for this team. But, there was this idea, mostly from the Reaves naysayers, like on social media, and they were saying, oh, yeah, good luck getting anything for Ryan Reaves. There's no way you can get anything for Ryan Reaves. You're going to have to attach, a prospect just to get somebody to take Ryan Reaves off your hand. No, that was never the case. There's 31 other teams in this league. Ryan Reaves, there's no secrets with him and what he brings to the table. You want him for physicality, toughness, and to play that enforcer role. One of the other 31 teams would certainly be willing to give up, a late round draft pick. I thought it might be something like a 6th-rounder. It ends up being a 5th-rounder from the Minnesota Wild. All you need is one of the other 31 teams to bite. I should probably amend that a little bit because I certainly don't think the Rangers were going to look to trade Ryan Reaves to the Pittsburgh Penguins or the New York Islanders, one of those teams. But you get the idea. There's a lot of other teams in this league, and I think certainly somebody would give up something in order to bring in Ryan Reaves. It's not like, 5th-round picks are typically going to turn out to be perennial all-stars and eventual Hall of Famers. So somebody will give up something, like I said. And Ryan Reaves still does have some value in that enforcer role. But as far as, what was going on with Reaves and the Rangers, it's just kind of a situation where I think we've seen pretty clear as day here that Ryan Reaves recently has kind of just been jumped in the pecking order by several of his Ranger teammates. And again, it was going to be hard to see Reaves kind of reclaiming a big role on this team, getting back to a situation where, he's in the lineup pretty much every single night, or even a situation where he's active more than he's a healthy scratch. I just don't think it was going to happen, and there's several reasons for that. For starters, I think his game has slipped a little bit. It's hard for him, not that he's ever been the fastest player in the league, but I think it's getting harder and harder for him to keep up with the pace of play. And on top of that, when you just look at this Ranger roster right now, there's a couple of different players who we didn't really know what their role was going to be at the start of the season. And some of those players have, once again, just kind of jumped Reaves. And I don't think that Reaves is going to get back into the lineup over any of these players that I'm going to mention here. Jimmy Vesey is one of them. Vesey came into camp on a PTO. He, is kind of moved up and down the lineup. I think Vesey, if I'm not mistaken, has only been a healthy scratch once, but he is a good defensive forward, can help you with killing penalties. Reaves isn't going to kill penalties for you. Vesey has even recently been playing with Mika Zibanejad and Chris Kreider on the top line. That's something that's sure to spark debate among Ranger fans if Vesey should be in that role. But regardless, I don't see Vesey, even if he drops down the lineup, I don't see him coming out of the lineup at this point, and certainly not for Ryan Reaves. Julien Gauthier is another. He was placed on waivers at the start of the season. Didn't really seem like the Rangers had a fit for him. Didn't really seem like they had a role for him. He clears waivers. He goes down to the Wolfpack, plays pretty well there, comes back up. And this is not setting a high bar, but I do think Gauthier has played better in this run that he's had for the Rangers early this season than he probably has at any other point in his NHL career. So that's obviously good. And Vitaly Kravtsov, he hasn't even gotten back into the lineup yet, but you have to figure that he's above Ryan Reaves in the pecking order as well, simply because, with Kravtsov, he's a former top 10 pick. He hasn't done a whole lot in the NHL, obviously, but there is still at least some upside there. And if somebody's going to, really make an offensive impact between Kravtsov or Reaves, you got to figure it's going to be Kravtsov over Ryan Reaves. So for all those reasons, again, unless the injuries just really piled up or whatever it might be, it was going to be very difficult to see Ryan Reaves getting to the point where he would once again claim a significant role with this team. And honestly, it might even be at the point where the Rangers might look to call somebody up from the AHL, whether it's, kind of a NHL, AHL swingman in the vein of like a Johnny Brodzinski, or even one of the prospects, somebody like Will Cooley or Lauri Pahuniemi. Maybe one of them gets a chance as well. The Rangers might even want to give one of those guys a chance rather than go back to Ryan Reaves. Ryan Reaves, like I said, there's no secrets in his game. He plays a very, very specific role. And I think that role of being the enforcer, being the tough guy, being kind of the big brother type, that was a little bit more needed by the Rangers last year than it is this year. And I'm not saying that, Reaves couldn't still have some value to this team. Like I said, I think the long and short of it is we just got to the point where a lot of guys had kind of, once again, jumped Ryan Reaves in the pecking order, and he was going to have a tough time getting back into the lineup on any sort of a consistent basis. So I want to keep talking about this. Going to talk about some of my favorite Ryan Reaves moments during the brief time that he spent on the New York Rangers. Also going to talk about the salary cap ramifications and what this means for the Rangers as far as what they could do, getting toward the trade deadline this season. It really does open up a world of possibilities. And we're going to talk about all that in just a second. But first, I just got to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for all your sports betting needs and sports wagering options. BetOnline can get you the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. From football to basketball to soccer to hockey and esports, we've got it all at betonline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. We are always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, we just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. So turning our attention now to sort of the business side of it, and then once again, we'll get back to kind of the human side of it. I'll talk about some of my my favorite Ryan Reaves moments as a New York Ranger. I'm also going to show a couple of things from social media. Reaves himself posted a couple pictures of, his tenure with the New York Rangers. So I'm going to show those pictures as well. It'll be a lot of fun. But as far as, the salary cap ramifications, with this move, this trade of Ryan Reaves, the Rangers now have a projected $6.682 million in cap space at the deadline this season. And as I mentioned just a second ago, this opens up a world of possibilities as far as what the Rangers could look to do, come deadline time. first of all, it seems certain that with Reaves out of the picture now, the Rangers are going to go with 22 players, once again, for the foreseeable future, as opposed to 23, once again, for cap accrual purposes. The Rangers, you got to figure they'll go with 13 forwards, 7 defensemen. Right now, Kravtsov is the 13th forward, but at some point, it seems likely that he could probably be back out there in place of somebody like a Carpenter, possibly a Blais, although they don't seem to want to make Blais a healthy scratch, and of course, he's still recovering from the ACL. We'll see if he can get it going at some point. Possibly Gauthier comes out of the lineup in favor of Kravtsov at a certain point. Maybe Jimmy Vesey. Did I already mention Carpenter? I meant to mention Carpenter, so he's another possibility as well. I would imagine eventually Kravtsov gets back in there, although it's possible Kravtsov could be somebody that's on the trading block as well. We shall see there. But then as far as the defensemen go, it basically just comes down to which one of Jones or Halak is in the lineup on any given night, and the other one will be the 7th defenseman and the healthy scratch. But as far as the salary cap space, the options that the Rangers have, there's quite a few of them on the table here. The one player that I think is going to be on everybody's mind is certainly Patrick Kane, and that at this point does become a possibility because, Kane, now 34 years old, but he's in the final year of his deal. The deal is paying him $10.5 million per season, but if the Rangers take on 50% of his salary in any kind of a hypothetical trade with the Chicago Blackhawks, then they would only be taking on $5.25 million, which is, under... It's less than the cap space that the Rangers have remaining. So a Kane trade, which would have been borderline impossible before this trade of Reaves, now becomes a possibility. And if it comes down to a situation where the Rangers have to move on from Ryan Reaves to bring in a Patrick Kane or one of the other truly top elite options as far as who's going to be available at the trade deadline, then it's a move you have to make. This move, this trading of Ryan Reaves here, it can feel like a complete gut punch, and it can totally suck, and it can hurt a little bit as a Ranger fan, while also making all the sense in the world. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. It's tough. You do get attached to these players. You'd love to see somebody like Ryan Reaves at the end of the season holding the Stanley Cup over his head as a member of the New York Rangers. By that same token, you look at the reasons why they did this, and it becomes very, very difficult to argue against it. So, I totally do understand the trade there. But, even if you don't go after Patrick Kane or one of the top, trade deadline targets as far as whoever's going to be available this year, again, you've got that $6.6 million if you're the Rangers, and you can kind of, add some complementary pieces as the Rangers did going into the trade deadline this past season when they brought in Vetrano and they brought in Kopp and they brought in Tyler Mott and they brought in Justin Braun, and all those guys played a role for the Rangers. You can kind of bring in, 2, maybe even 3 players at the deadline this season, kind of fill out the roster. We've talked about how depth is an issue for the Rangers, and they solved it with their trade deadline moves this past season. They could look to do something similar this upcoming season, even if they don't nab one of the big fish on the pond, as in, Patrick Kane or one of the other top guys. So, very intriguing. Like I said, it opens up, the term I keep using, it opens up a world of possibilities if you're the New York Rangers as far as what you can do at the trade deadline. The other thing here that I want to talk about is, with Reaves, I saw some people, of course, saying, well, why'd they trade Reaves? Why didn't they trade this guy or trade that guy? So we'll kind of give everybody a fair trial here. For starters, once again, Ryan Reaves asked for this trade, so that's part of it, and I think they want to do right by Reaves and also make sure that they sent him out of the Eastern Conference and certainly out of the division, which they, of course, did, sending him to the Minnesota Wild. But as far as, trading somebody else, it's not going to be any of the superstar players. We know that, especially the ones that have no move clauses. It's not going to be also anybody on the other side of the spectrum, anybody making a really small amount of money. You've got guys like Vesey at $750K, Carpenter at $750K, Gauthier, at $800K, Kravtsov at $875, and Halak at $800. Nobody there was going to get traded because it just wouldn't make enough of an impact as far as, what the Rangers would get as far as trade accrual money is concerned, heading into the trade deadline. It just wouldn't make enough of an impact. So trading one of those guys wouldn't really do anything. As far as Reaves goes, though, he was making $1.75 million. So it makes quite a bit of more impact as far as, what the Rangers will now be able to do, trading away somebody who's making, a fairly significant salary. It's not a ton, but obviously, once again, it does open up some cap space for the Rangers heading into the trade deadline this season. And, some of those players that I just mentioned, they could eventually get traded. I think Krasov is somebody that could get dealt before the season is over. But if they trade Krasov, it's not going to be for the purposes of cap space accrual. It's going to be for the purposes of packaging him along with a couple of other assets in return for whatever the Rangers might get at the trade deadline, whoever they might bring in when the deadline rolls around. The one player who I will admit was a possibility here, and you could make a case for why didn't the Rangers trade this guy instead of Ryan Reaves, I would say that's Sammy Blais. Blais, just like Reaves, is a UFA once the season is over, and Blais is currently making $1.525 million, so that not that much less than Ryan Reaves. It's an option the Rangers could have gone with, but again, Sammy Blais did not ask for a trade. Ryan Reaves did. Ryan Reaves makes a little bit more money than he does, and I think the Rangers, with that Buchnevich trade last year, I don't know if stubbornness is a part of it, and they just want to be right about Sammy Blais. The other part of it, too, is that, Blais, I think, with the ACL, and I don't want to keep using that as an excuse for him all season, but that is a serious injury. It's pretty grueling rehab from what I understand. So I think they want to continue to give him a chance, and I think that, Blais, even though he hasn't done a whole lot offensively this year, does have a little bit more offensive firepower than Ryan Reaves does, and plays pretty much just as physical as Ryan Reaves. He might not get quite as many hits, but you don't see Sammy Blais pass up the opportunity to, drive somebody into the board. So it is what it is. It's a move that, again, can sting a little bit, but I think if you're a Ranger fan, you also have to kind of understand and appreciate where the Rangers are coming from making this move here. But as far as, some of my favorite memories and favorite moments with Ryan Reaves as part of the New York Rangers, because we do want to give him a proper send-off. He was a class act the entire time he was here. I'm going to miss the Shesty release us chance at the beginning of every game, or at least any game that he was dressed. You guys know what I'm talking about. Anybody that follows this team on social media, I don't even know what started it. I think I knew the story, and then I just kind of forgot about it. But I got to look this up again. But bottom line, before every game, Rangers are in the tunnel. Shesty's there. Shesterkin's there. He's kind of, in his crouch and getting ready to go out onto the ice. And Ryan Reaves would just call out, "Shesty, release us." And then they would go onto the ice. And he just started doing that last season. And, hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. The Rangers had a great season last year. And, obviously that was part of it. Their grand entrance going onto the ice. Anything that kind of brings the team together and adds a little bit of fun to the game of hockey, that's a good thing. And, Ryan Reaves obviously having some fun with his team there and doing that chant before every game. I'm going to miss the big hits that Ryan Reaves puts on people. I mean, that can really electrify a team. It can really electrify the home crowd. I think to, specifically the playoff series against the Penguins, the first two games in New York, I mean, he was just wrecking people. There was one situation where, he knocked Malkin down in open ice, and Malkin went flying into the boards. I mean, the crowd went nuts for that. I can't imagine why. But it was a clean hit, and Malkin was fine. It's not like he got hurt or anything. I wouldn't want him to get hurt. But yeah, Reaves, those bone-jarring hits, gonna miss those. Gonna miss the willingness to fight. He didn't get into a ton of fights throughout his Ranger tenure, and he even joked about that, saying it's kind of hard for me to find a dance partner these days. Understandably so. But he was undefeated. He didn't lose a single fight that he got into as a member of the New York Rangers. And gonna miss the fact that he was always a team-first guy. Like I said, he started to be a healthy scratch at times down the stretch last season, particularly after the trade deadline, as well as for certain games in the playoffs, and he never complained. He said straight up, yes, of course I want to play, but I got to be a team-first guy, and I got to support them and play whatever role they ask me to play. And that's really refreshing, because there's certain players, especially some veteran players, that would not have acted nearly as selflessly as Reaves did once he was kind of becoming a healthy scratch fairly regularly late last season, into the playoffs as well, and certainly this season as well. As far as individual moments from certain games, I think back to the playoff series against the Hurricanes. The Rangers went down 2-0 in that series. Game 3, the Rangers won, but at the end of that game, you had Max Domi, for pretty much no reason at all, skating up to Ryan Lindgren, cross-checking him, and attacking him for no reason. And Lindgren, he dropped the gloves and he's fighting Domi. You also had Tony DeAngelo yelling and barking at Gerard Gallant on the bench. Haven't really figured out what that was all about. But Game 4, I mean, Ryan Reaves, he made sure that both Domi and DeAngelo, those were marked men for Ryan Reaves. There was a big tussle between Reaves and DeAngelo at the start of a game during a play stoppage. They were in each other's faces. Reaves was basically just daring him to try anything. So that was awesome. Love that. I think pretty much every Ranger fan loved that. And also, toward the end of the game, Reaves is going after Domi a little bit and trying to get a piece of him as well. So That really stood out for me. And of course, the Rangers won that game. They won game 4. They went on to win that series in 7 games. The fight that Reaves had with Foligno this year, and of course, the two of them are about to be teammates. Reaves now going to the Minnesota Wild. But, that game against the Wild got a little bit nasty, and, Reaves and Foligno, they dropped the gloves, and Reaves clearly won that fight. That fight basically became a meme about 4 seconds after it was over. You guys have probably seen it. Some of you guys that are on social media, the picture where Reaves and Foligno are along the boards and along the glass. The picture is taken from behind the glass, but Reaves is just like landing a right hand, and Foligno's head is like turning the other way, and it was awesome. Like I said, it was an instant meme as soon as Reaves won that fight, so that was cool. Something else that stood out for me, look, you don't think of Ryan Reaves as kind of an offensive juggernaut, but as I mentioned in our last episode where we discussed Ryan Reaves, last season with the Rangers, tied for his 3rd highest point total ever. And specifically, there was a game against Toronto last year where Reaves actually scored 2 goals, and both of those goals gave the Rangers the lead in that game against the Maple Leafs. The first one put them up 2-1. The second one put the Rangers up 3-2, and it actually held up as the game winner because the Rangers, or no, it was not the game winner, but it did put them up for good in that game. The Rangers won that game by a final score of 6-2. Or 6-3. So that was awesome. Reaves coming through big, 2 goals against the Toronto Maple Leafs. And it was weird because the few times that Reaves would score last year, it seemed to always happen during one of the nationally televised games. I guess Reaves just likes the spotlight, but that was awesome seeing him come up with once again, 2-goal performance against the Leafs and 2 goals that both gave the Rangers the lead in that game. There was also a play last year where he had just a nasty backhand pass out of the corner, in on the forecheck and set the Rangers up to score a goal. I scoured the internet. I was trying to find it. Was not able to do so. But some of you guys will probably remember that one as well. Like I said, he kind of went on the forecheck, loose puck, got it on the backhand, just threw it toward the front of the net and set up a teammate for a goal. So that was cool too. And I figure, I'll leave you guys. We're not done yet, really. But as far as, kind of wrapping up this section, I'll leave you guys with a quote from Gerard Gallant. This is what he had to say after the trade about Ryan Reaves. He was outstanding. He was a good person, and I got close to him. I coached him for 2.5 years in Vegas. I coached him here for 1.5 years. Did the organization great. Players love him. And that's the sense that I always got about Reavo, too. I just get the feeling that he's a very popular member of that locker room, and I do think the Rangers are going to miss him, at least to a certain extent. I figure the other thing I can do here is show you guys some of the posts on social media as far as, Ryan Reaves, and we got one from Barclay Goodrow here as well. So there's the one from Goodrow for anybody watching on YouTube. But Goodrow posted this on Instagram not too long after the trade went down, and it just says, my guy, at Reavo75, which is Reaves' handle on Twitter. And then Ryan Reaves himself posted a batch of pictures, or whatever you want to call it, on Instagram. I don't really know all the Instagram lingo, but obviously, he posts pictures of himself with the Rangers, and the caption says, New York, I've been released. Thanks for letting me take a bite out of the Big Apple. It was real. And then to just kind of scroll through real quickly here, there he is with Goodrow. There he is signing some autographs with the fans. There he is celebrating, looks to be a goal with Mika Zibanejad. There he is celebrating another goal with Mika and Kreider. There he is with Kreider after a game. There he is with Ryan Lindgren. There he is with Artemi Panarin. Celebrating another goal and celebrating another goal. So just really cool stuff from Ryan Reaves. Like I said, I think he really enjoyed being a Ranger, enjoyed his time here. And I know for one that I definitely enjoyed Ryan Reaves being a part of this New York Ranger team and being a part of that big run that they had last year. Like I said, you can think that this sucks and acknowledge that it's a gut punch and also completely understand where the Rangers are coming from and why they did what they did. And you know what, Ryan Reaves, here's hoping that he gets a bigger role for himself in Minnesota, gets to be in the lineup more often. And as far as the Western Conference playoffs, I mean, I might pull for the Wild a little bit over there. I mean, they got Zuccarello, they got Ryan Reaves. I don't really have any other horse in that race. So why not? Go Wild in the Western Conference playoffs. But we're going to keep everything going in just a second here. I do want to talk at least a little bit about the Rangers game against the Ducks and what turned out to be a pretty disappointing 3-2 loss against Anaheim to conclude the 4-game road trip, and we will do that in just a second. All right, so like I said, Rangers lose 3-2 to the Ducks. They had a golden opportunity to end the road trip with a 3-game winning streak, claim 7 out of a potential 8 points on the road. And it's funny because they started the road trip with a loss to the Seattle Kraken. They lost to the Kraken 3-2 in overtime. Disappointing loss. Rangers were not at their best there. But the one thing I said when it was over, let's get 5 out of 8 points on this road trip. Let's bounce back and win 2 out of the next 3 games. Well, the Raiders won the next 2 games of the road trip against the Sharks and Kings. And at that point, you've already gotten 5 out of the possible 8. And then you just get to be greedy. And it's like, okay, we're playing the Ducks. They're almost 20 games into the season. They haven't won a single game in regulation. And what happens? Well, the Ducks beat the Rangers in regulation by a final score of 3-2. And very, very disappointing. Again, they hit their goal, the goal that I set for them. 5 out of 8 points on a road trip is not bad at all. Man, you were a win against the Ducks away from an excellent road trip and claiming 7 out of a possible 8 points. So definitely some mixed feelings as this road trip ends. And I think we do have to talk about what's becoming a little bit of the elephant in the room, and that is Jaroslav Halak. Now, going into this game, I've made the case, and I stand by this. He had started 5 games. There's no way that Jaroslav Halak deserved to be winless based on how he had played. I thought, one mediocre game against the Islanders, 1 bad game against the Blue Jackets. He was very good in the other games, but this is another really, really bad game for Halak against the Ducks. He made some good saves, but 2 of the goals that he let in were just absolutely atrocious and should never have crossed the goal line, should never have gotten past him. And, to just kind of take you guys through the goals real quick, there was one that happened just 39 seconds into the second period, shot from along the boards. It basically just goes right through Halak. The shot was by Kulikov, goes right through Halak and into the net. Gave the Ducks a 2-1 lead, and the Ducks were up for good at that point in the game. This puck just cannot go in. I think I speak for everybody when I say that. And then the Terry goal that also happened in the second period was almost as bad. Terry had a takeaway in the neutral zone. Panarin was trying to hit Goodrow with a pass, could not do it. Terry ends up carrying it over the blue line. He shoots from the top of the right circle, and he scores off the post and in. Again, it's just one of those shots that can't go in. Terry was in there by himself. He had nobody to pass to. The Rangers had a lot of guys back on defense. I don't think Halak was screened or anything like that. He's got to stop this puck. And instead, the Rangers are down 3-1. They do end up getting a goal by Braden Schneider to cut it to 3-2 late in the second period, but unfortunately, that was also the final score. The Rangers were hitting the post left and right. It just was not their night. And a game where the Rangers clearly outplayed the opposition, but did not win. And I got to say, the biggest reason they did not win is because of their goalie, Jaroslav Halak. Now, again, coming into this offseason, we knew the Rangers were going to be looking for a backup goalie because they couldn't afford Alex Georgiev, and he had some trade value, clearly, and the Rangers traded him. Looking at the veteran goalies that were available, Halak was near the top of my list. I think overall, he's had kind of an underrated career and has had some good seasons. He's been a backup before, and somebody that could, if anything happens to Igor, knock on wood, could keep the ship from sinking. But, again, I don't think he should be winless in these 6 games based on how he's played, but this is a really rough performance against the Ducks, and, it is becoming something of a problem. You do hope that the Rangers can eventually, play a strong game in front of him, and he can bring his A game and eventually get a win, because if this keeps going like this, and he just remains winless and remains winless and remains winless, then sooner or later you figure something has to give. I'm not ready to throw in the towel just yet. A lot of people are kind of piling on Jaroslav Halak, so I'm going to kind of pull back the reins just a little bit here, but I do get the frustration from Ranger fans because those 2 goals that he gave up in the second period against the Ducks just cannot happen. Some of the good news from this game is that the Rangers got a little bit of secondary scoring once again. We're starting to see a little bit more of that from the Rangers. You had Barclay Goodrow giving the Rangers a 1-0 lead by scoring on a breakaway. And it's funny because, Goodrow, he's certainly not a speed demon, but I will say, he looked faster on this play than I've typically seen him or known him to be. It's not Pavel Bure in his prime. He's not, one of the faster skaters in the league or anything like that, but maybe like average speed. And I realized there was a defenseman chasing him who wasn't too fast, so maybe that made Goodrow look faster than he actually is. But very nice to see Goodrow go in, stepping up for the Rangers. They need more secondary scoring, and Goodrow has stepped up in that role lately for this team. Braden Schneider, again, scores for the second straight game, his second goal of the season. This is kind of a soft goal, which is weird because Gibson was phenomenal for the Ducks in this game. But, Panarin up to Mika. Mika across the ice to Schneider. Schneider shoots and scores, pretty much just got through Gibson. Assist number 400 for Artemi Panarin. So that was nice to see. Always good to see somebody hit a milestone. And, very, very nice to see Schneider get another goal here. You hope that some of the Ranger defense, and as we talked about, can chip in a little bit more offensively than we've seen so far this season. And, like I said, it's such a bag of mixed emotions when you lose a game like this to the Ducks of all teams, and you end up, going 2-1-1 on the road trip. It's a solid road trip, but man, you had a chance. You just had to beat the Ducks to make this, again, a excellent road trip for this team. Rangers outshot the Ducks 43-22. And I want to share one more thing on social media here. This is a tweet by Steve Valaket. He does this thing where, he keeps track of, the scoring opportunities for both teams throughout the course of a game. And, I'm not one to make excuses for the Rangers or anybody else if they lose, but, this chart here really kind of tells the tale as far as what this game was like and just how badly the Rangers outplayed the Ducks and nevertheless still lost the game. So for anybody watching on YouTube, you can see the chart. And for anybody on audio, I'll just kind of read it for you. As far as scoring chances are concerned, the Rangers had 46 scoring chances in this game. The Ducks had just 19. And then what Valaket does is he breaks these down into low danger scoring opportunities, medium danger scoring opportunities, and high danger scoring opportunities. So we'll start with the Rangers. The Rangers had 25 low danger scoring opportunities. They scored on one of them. That was the goal by Schneider. They had 9 medium danger scoring opportunities. They did not score on any of them. And they had 12 high danger scoring opportunities, only scored on one of them. And then you look over at the Ducks. The Ducks had 11 low danger scoring chances. They scored on 2 of them. And again, that kind of tells you the story of this game. 2 soft goals, in by Jaroslav Halak. That's the difference. Otherwise, if those 2 don't go in, I'm no mathematician, but the Rangers probably win this game by a final score of 2-1. You never know how that affects how everybody plays. But bottom line, 2 soft goals let in by Jaroslav Halak. The Ducks also had 2 medium danger scoring opportunities, did not score on either of those. And they had 6 high danger scoring opportunities, scored on one of those. And if you look at total expected goals going by this formula, the Rangers had an expected goals total of 5.52 goals. The Ducks had an expected goals total of 2.77 goals. So the Rangers, going by everything that happened in this game, were expected to outscore the Ducks by nearly 3 total goals. And I'm not one, again, to kind of look at these. I mean, metrics and analytics, they all have their place and everything like that, but I'm not one to lean on those too heavily and kind of make excuses because, you got to find a way. Whatever happens in the game, you got to grind your way out to a win. And that's what we saw the Rangers do last year, winning some games where, these numbers were almost in the opposite order and the Rangers were expected to lose, but they would win anyway. And this year, you're kind of seeing a little bit of the opposite. So you hope that the luck changes for the Rangers, but by that same token, hey, you know what? Sometimes you got to make your own luck, and you just got to find a way to win a game, even on a night where your goalie doesn't have it and the other goalie is turning into Dominik Hasek in his prime. But that will pretty much do it for today, guys. Once again, if you'd like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com, and definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that's @LO_NY_Rangers, and definitely subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I'll see you next time. Thanks for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast. The biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts.